Once you have added tracks to your session, the next thing that you really should do is to name each track with a description that's appropriate for that track. A lot of assignments that I see students turn in, their tracks look just like this, which is by default how they appear, the name of the track and then a number after them when you add tracks in Pro Tools. So to rename a track, all you need to do is double click on the nameplate like this, and then it'll open up this dialog box. So maybe this will be the vocal. You can do this in either the mix or the edit window. So maybe vocal 2. So both windows will show the exact same information. You can also right click on the nameplate and then scroll down to where it says rename, and this will bring up that rename dialog box as well. If you intend to rename multiple tracks, so for example here, audio 3 to audio 10, you click on the first one and then shift and click on the last one so that they're all highlighted. And now when you double click on any of these, you get a little bit different screen with the next and a previous button. So this way you could go, maybe we say BGR Vox, background vocal, 1. And then you can hit next. That way you don't have to open up this dialog every time. GDR Vox 2. Now there's also a shortcut to go previous and next. And that shortcut is Command and right arrow or Command and left arrow. So if you're doing a bunch of these, here's the methodology I usually use. I go Command C, and now I've copied everything but the number. Then I'll go Command right arrow and paste, space 3, and then Command right arrow, paste 4, Command right arrow, paste 5. And you just continue that way to rename your tracks. By naming them this way, it's much easier to keep track of your tracks. When you want to delete a track, a few things you need to understand. If you have a bunch of audio, let's say you've recorded a bunch of audio and you have something like this, you can see here's all the audio over here in the clips list, which is in this side column. Shows you every piece of audio that I've just created. If you want to delete a track, you can again right click on it and hit delete. Now what's important to understand here is when you delete a track in Pro Tools, unlike other DAWs, once it's deleted, you can't get that track back. So here, if we take this track and delete it, we're not only going to lose these clips and where they're located here, but we're going to lose this track. Now, if I delete this, it's going to pop up and say, are you sure you want to delete this? It has active clips in it. In this case, I do, because I want to make a point here. Look at these clips over here on the right side. So when I hit delete, those clips all go away, but they're still here. So I could basically drag these onto another track and, reposition them. So I do still have the data, I just don't have the correct order or the location of each of these individual clips. You can also delete a clip by coming up here to the track menu and coming down to delete. There it is, delete track. That's another way to delete a track. So inside Pro Tools, there's always numerous ways to do the same thing. In this case, right click or come up here to the track and select delete. There are two specific cursors in Pro Tools. One is called the playback cursor, the other is called the edit cursor. The edit cursor is a flashing line. So right there you can see the edit cursor. It's this flashing line. The playback cursor is this long vertical solid line that scrolls across the screen as Pro Tools plays back. So you can see two separate cursors. For this course, we leave the playback cursor and the edit cursor linked together, and we do that with this button right here. It links the timeline and the edit selection button. If I deselect that, you can see that now our edit selection is there, but our playback cursor is in a different location. So we can have essentially two different cursors doing different things. Again, for this course, we'll just leave them linked. You can select the point at which Pro Tools plays back easily by just clicking with the mouse. You have to make sure you're using the selector tool. So if I come up here, use the selector tool, wherever I place my cursor, in this case it's the edit cursor, but because they're linked, then whenever I hit spacebar, Pro Tools starts from that specific location. If you're using the Smart tool, which I normally do, you have to make sure that when you are designating the point at which you want Pro Tools to start, that you are above the center line of a particular track. If you're below the center line, you'll have the grabber tool, and then you're not able to drop that cursor where it needs to be. So make sure it's always the selector tool, and you'll get the selector tool with the Smart tool enabled if you are above the center line of any track. If you have another tool enabled, so for example, the grabber tool, and you're working on something specifically, you can't make a selection down here to place your cursor because remember, it needs to be the selector tool. However, if you move up into the time rulers, you'll see now it turns into a selector tool. So again, if you're using any of the other tools, you won't be able to place your cursor, but you can come up here into the tool line and place your cursor. In Pro Tools, there's something called the Playback Cursor Locator. What that is a small blue triangle that either appears right here or over here when the cursor has scrolled off of the screen. So for example, right now, if I hit play, as soon as the cursor goes off the screen, watch right here. There's that cursor locator right there. What that does is it tells you where your cursor is located. So if you want to follow it and go, oh yeah, I want to be where my playback cursor is located right now, just click on it, and it'll take you to that new location. There will also be times where you'll see the playback cursor locator on the left-hand side of the screen, like you see it right now. So if I click there, it's going to take me back to, in this case, about measure 14, because that's where the playback cursor is located. Let's look at some of the scrolling options that are available here in the edit window. So scrolling options are something you can turn on or off. So again, they will be under the options menu, edit window scrolling. Now you can see there are 4 options here: no scrolling, after playback, page, and continuous. So no scrolling is what I've got selected now, and that's basically just what it says. So wherever I place my cursor, once it gets off the screen, Pro Tools does not scroll and follow it. Another option is page. I use this one quite a bit as well. If I zoom in, you can see what happens. As soon as it scrolls off the page or tries to scroll off the page, the background is repositioned, so the cursor never leaves. So the cursor is always visible when you are scrolling using page. The next one will scroll and then stop after you play back. So wherever I stop, as soon as I stop, then Pro Tools will take the edit window to that location. And lastly is continuous. This one drives me crazy, but some people really like it. And it keeps your playback cursor dead center on the screen and scrolls the background behind. So again, your scrolling options are under the options menu and edit window scrolling. And if you have page selected, for example, and you zoom way in, so let's do this. You can see how it's scrolling. But if I keep zooming in, the scrolling gets so fast that it just stops at some point in time. So, it's not operating incorrectly. It's just the scrolling is so fast it deems, I guess, that it's not usable. So if you have that happen, just make sure you back out of your zoom level on your edit window.